So anyhow, I would like to introduce to you then Daniel McCarthy. Now, I heard about Daniel back in early July. Shortly after 18 people down in the Phoenix area had lunch with him, or was it dinner? I don't know. Sue and her group vetted you and were introduced to you, or themselves to you, or whatever. And there were only 4 of those people that I did not know through working, statewide issues and stuff. So anyhow, so I got a phone call and they were extremely impressed with him. Since then, he has been doing his due diligence to figure out if he actually should run for U.S. Senate on the Republican ticket and trying to ace Martha McSally, but more so go up against Mark Kelly, the Democrat, who doesn't really, he says he's out of Tucson. That's Gabby Gifford's husband, remember? So he's a huge anti-gun Democrat. He actually has lived most all of his life in Texas, but he's here running in Arizona. So anyhow, I have met Daniel. I think this is the third or fourth time to had conversations on the phone, and I think he's got a good shot at it. So Don is back there. So there's a middle ground here. He's gone. All right. So Daniel McCarthy is a Phoenix area's businessman who will challenge U.S. Senator Martha McSally in the Republican primary. McCarthy, who founded a cosmetic company and real estate brokerage with his wife, Lexi, is running because he believes he provides the best representation for Arizona in the U.S. Senate. McCarthy opposes any restrictions on gun rights, supports President Donald Trump's proposed border wall, and believes in repealing Obamacare. Repealing. Limited government, states' rights, and dismantling the Federal Department of Education. To learn more, you go to demanddaniel.com. So, anyhow, here is, first I want to introduce, this is Tanya Anderson, his mother-in-law, mother of his wife, Lexi. This is Chris McCarthy, cousin.
That's right.
And this is Daniel McCarthy, candidate.
I just want to say that if you get a phishing email from my campaign saying you have to do this, you have to vote for me or else this is what will happen, that didn't come from this meeting. It's funny when those emails come out that it scares people.
It's not that long.
I'm going to move around a little bit if you don't mind. And I know that you have the camera there, but I have a tendency to walk around a little bit. Is it okay? Because I can't sit still. You can see everything, so I'm okay to move, right? All right. Okay.
Yeah.
My name is Daniel McCarthy. I am an entrepreneur from Phoenix. I moved to Phoenix when I was 18 years old. My brother was stationed at Luke Air Force Base, so I'm from upstate New York, and I fell in love with the Phoenix area, as you can imagine, because I was a snow shoveler from the time I was a young man. Okay? And I wanted to stop doing that as quickly as possible. So I fell in love with Phoenix. My wife and I, we were married very young. I met her at 18. We fell in love, and we have 4 children. Our business background is such that we just blossomed where we were planted. And we became entrepreneurs by accident, and we developed great businesses. We learned the hard way. And when I say that, what I mean is I did not come from any wealth. I did not come from a family that frankly gave me a platform to jump from. We had to do it the old-fashioned way. And I think that's why I have a unique appreciation for what's going on in our country, and I have a unique concern for what's going on in our country. We have 4 children. The ranges of my children are 15 through 10. So don't worry, because they're at that age now where when I said I might have to go to Washington, D.C., they were all kind of happy about it, and I don't know why. Closer?
Yeah.
A little bit louder? Okay. I'm very concerned about what's going on in our country. And I have an unhealthy observation of politics due to the fact that when I was a young man, my mother ran for city council, and she won. She was actually the first woman to be elected in the town I grew up in. From that point forward, I paid particular attention to politics for some strange reason. And by the way, the first observation that I took away from politics was I will never be a politician. So, there you go. I've been a PC for about 10 years in the Republican Party in the Phoenix metro area. In my district, I live in LD 22. I've been sitting in the back of the room as a young man. I kind of stick out. And I've been sitting there and listening. And that's something that I do pretty well. I've been watching and observing what's going on in our country from a long time. We have a big problem in our country. Our federal government, at this point, is so corrupt. And our federal government is conducting business in such a way that we're at a tipping point. We have adopted policies that are unconstitutional, and we have compromised ourselves to an edge as a party. I am not here to tell you about bills that I want to pass. I'm not here to tell you about legislation that I want to create. I'm here to tell you that I want to restrain the federal government and start tearing down the bills that have been created. What I'm looking to do is go to Washington, D.C. and yield something that only a senator can do. One senator, not one president, not one House member, not one judge, but one senator can do something very special. They can stand on the Senate floor and talk until their legs can't continue to stand. And I plan on yielding that as much as I possibly can. Because at some point in time in this country, we have to recognize that federal agencies have been created and they are making law. That's unconstitutional. We have a border that now 30 million illegal immigrants are living in our country and taking our wealth and sending it back to their country. That's happening. We have drugs crawling across our border that is now affecting 60,000 deaths a year. And we're talking about gun regulations. We have an extreme left in our country now that is in a position to where we're one election cycle away from government-controlled health care. Now I want to ask you a question. Let me paint this picture for you. Has anybody considered the world where the government controls health care, and let's just say there's some form of red flag law or something like that on the books? And can you imagine my son, who's now 15 years old, 10 years from now, going into the doctors and refusing to take a prescription that's prescribed to him? And imagine him at that point losing his ability to utilize firearms or have a firearm to defend himself. And by the way, firearms in this country are used 2.2 million times a year to defend. That's right. Individuals in this country every single year use a firearm by way of showing it or by way of using it to actually defend themselves 2.2 million times a year. And we're talking about situations where they're trying to restrict our gun rights. What's going on? I want everybody to consider the fact that maybe, and I don't know, maybe the source of the corruption is a little bit more sinister than what we all care to admit. So that's what I have to do. Because when I sit around my kitchen table and I was making this decision, and I had wonderful people come to me, by the way. It started off, like Sue said, it was interesting. I sat down for a few meetings. I had 5 people, then 10 people, then 20 people. Next thing I know, I had 50, then 100, and now all of a sudden there was just all these people reaching out to me saying, Daniel, we want you to run for this office. And I said to myself, well, that's pretty interesting. I'm just a 34-year-old guy. What the heck do you want me for? By the way, I started the process as a donor. I was looking for someone to run because we cannot lose another Senate seat in this country. We just lost one. And for some odd reason, my opponent was then appointed to the seat. So, here I sit, and I say, well, what are we going to do about it? Because all these wonderful people, as I mentioned, have been coming to me and sharing with me information that frankly will keep you up at night. Information that I had no idea of how bad things really have gotten. So how can I look at my 4 kids in the eyes knowing what I know? And that was a decision that came very prayerfully, and in a lot of due diligence was conducted. Yes, we can win this seat. Yes, I can win. What it's going to take is something truly remarkable, because it's going to be a miracle. I'm fighting the machine.
Amen.
They came out against me while I was considering the run. To tell you how bad this is, in the last 2 days, there has been newspaper articles written about me saying things that I have not said. So, this is the world we live in. I don't have a choice but to fight. And I think you all know that. And I think you can see it. I think you can kind of sense it. I'm not the type of guy to really do things for any other reason but because I think I have to. Last thing I'll say, and I'll open it up for questions because I think that's the best way to have a conversation, is just answer any questions that you have for me. But the last thing I'll tell you is that there's something going on, and it's primal. I'm talking to groups, and when I talk to groups, there's something going on in people's guts. There's a fight for survival in this country. We need to have our 10th Amendment respected again. We need to get the federal government under control quickly. The federal government has continuously expanded, and we have to stop it now. So that's what I'm applying to do. If you hire me, that's exactly what I will do. I will do everything in my power to do that. So yeah, let me open this up for questions. Is that okay?
Yes.
Yeah. And
Okay.
I don't know how much time I have, but I'll be happy to.
Well, yeah.
This is my last stop. I was in Tucson this morning,
Yeah,
Wow.
so this is my last
You
stop.
have-
I'm not
you
going
have-
back to
we
Tucson.
can do 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay. Joe, do you mind? Or Wes, either one of you. Okay, it's not on. Okay, we have rules for those of you who haven't been around a long time. We start out one side of the room, and then we do the other side of the room. So Daniel, watch, and we'll call on people. And you can't talk unless you've got the mic in your hand. Keep your questions kind of succinct. And Joe, one thing, you've always got to point this away from the speaker over there. Okay. All right, good. So who has a question? Over here. Okay. Is that Jim you're pointing at? Jim.
Is there a national figure, whether it be a politician, maybe a talk show host, or something that you kind of align with, feel that the values, because your speech was rather short. I was just kind of wondering if there'd be someone that you go, wow, this person is a wise person, I would take their advice and their lead in following their policies.
I am a Barry Goldwater type conservative.
Yay!
I think consciousness of conservatism should be a mandatory reading in our school system.
Yeah.
Okay, do we have a question on that side?
I have a question.
Okay.
The problem that I have with Kristen Sinema is she's almost invisible. And I would like to know how you are going to be different from her. And
You mean McSally?
I'm sorry, Martha McSally. She's almost invisible. What I want to know is how are you going to manage to be visible and known to the population?
It's a great question. The 17th Amendment of our country is an amendment, frankly, that I do not agree with. However, a federal senator doesn't have to comply with it in theory, meaning that a federal senator has every right to report back to the state legislative body to tell them what's going on in Washington, D.C., and also to get their feedback for what's going on in Washington, D.C. So one of the things that I plan on implementing in terms of my time in office is a culture to where I act as though I am reporting back to our state legislative body. That's something I intend on making as though it's a pledge, meaning that when I get to office, when I go to Washington, D.C., when I come back from Washington, D.C., my first stop is to stand in the state legislative body and communicate with these folks about what we're seeing and get their feedback of what we should be doing. Next to that is, of course, is that I have a natural bend towards small businesses because I've owned and operated small businesses and know how difficult it is to become a big business from a small business. And I know how difficult it is when you have the federal government confiscating the wealth. So my goal is of course, to maintain a phenomenal relationships with a lot of the small businesses that I know and a lot of the mid-sized and big businesses that I know in Arizona. The nice thing you have with me is, sir, is I'm not applying for this job to be a good senator, or I want to be the very best senator that we've seen in your lifetime. I want to be the very best senator that we can possibly have, not just for sake of argument, but because we know how to do it. I'm kind of competitive. So I know the best way to do that, to your point, and to be the very best senator, is to be like this as much as possible with the people that send me to Washington, D.C.
We have Don here.
You said the magic word,
Uh-oh,
17th Amendment.
okay.
Are you aware that the 17th Amendment is specifically prohibited by the United States Constitution unless every state ratifies it?
This is something that I have heard, and this is something I've become well-versed on. But I cannot speak in terms of legal assurances. I can speak in terms of, yes, I've heard what you're saying, and I believe it to be true, but I would never at this time say that you are 100% correct, because I have not had 100% assurances on what you just said.
Article 5, last paragraph, provided that no amendment which shall be made prior to 1,808 shall in any manner affect the first and fourth clauses of the ninth section of the first article, which doesn't matter, it has nothing to do with what we're talking about.
Sure.
Semicolon, and that no state without its consent shall be deprived of its equal suffrage in the Senate.
I tend to believe the fact that the 17th Amendment was probably when we started to really lose our republic.
It was declared totally in 10 states failed to consent, so it was absolutely not ratified, and we've had a rogue occupation government ever since. Now, my point about this is that any state, at any time they wish, could simply declare the 17th Amendment invalid, recall their senators, fire them, and appoint new senators, could be the same ones, and send them to Washington. And if the federal government refuses to seat them in the Senate, then that state no longer is responsible for what the federal government wants.
Very interesting. And I've heard this before, and I would love to apply for this job with our state legislator.
Joe, you want to Bill?
The article in the paper, which appeared twice, once today and once Friday, I guess, said that you have what you either founded or were in some way involved in a cosmetic company, although it said cosmetic removal company. Is that right? So you don't, even the cosmetics, I was married to a Mary Kay girl for a short
Sure,
time.
sure.
She was a short girl too. Anyway, but you aren't in cosmetics, you're in cosmetic removal, is that correct?
Yes, one of the things I'm very careful of is to, I try my best when I'm in meetings not to discuss the names, and people I think will respect this, I hope, over time. I have yet to talk about my organizations, because what I don't want people thinking is I'm doing this as a promotion. So yes, the organization that we founded was an organization that the primary product was a makeup removal company. Yes.
Thank you,
Yep.
thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Well, we've got, well, Glenn before Jim.
Thank you for coming. I don't want to be discouraged, I'm gonna ask you a question, and I don't want to be discouraged because a lot of us don't sign a petition right away.
That's okay.
You're in for a tough fight, we gotta see if your skin's gonna take it.
Sure.
Tell me what you do about the people that was anti-Trump, and we got them here in this county.
Yeah.
They try to act like by name that they're Republicans, but they do everything that the Democrats do, everything.
Right.
And so you don't try to split your party up, you kind of tolerate them up to a point. And we're seeing that in our own city government really bad. And,
I've heard.
yeah, so what are you gonna do to overcome that?
This is a really interesting, we have cover in the Republican Party right now because the left is going through the same type of fracture that we have in our party. Their fracture is a little bit more obvious and deeper than ours because you have now Marxism showing itself that it is the Democratic Party, and then you have this group of people that think, wait a second, that's not what we signed up for. So that's a little bit more of an obvious fracture than what we have in our party, but we have a fracture. However, election cycle over election cycle, because of patriots, patriot groups like the Tea Party groups, we have been growing, we have been not only growing in, let's just say, prominence and influence in our party. The Trump campaign, I believe, was kind of the first break open of that momentum that we've been building on for years. It's no longer the fact that the conservatives make up 20-30% of the voice of the Republican Party. Right now it's about a 50-50 split, if not more, every single week that goes by for us. So how we're going to overcome that, sir, is very simple. We have, with our Constitution, the secret sauce to what makes our country great. And just because we have what I call retail Republicans, I don't call them rhinos, I don't insult them, I call them retail Republicans. And the reason why I say that is because we have to embrace these folks. And we have to explain to them that we've tried it your way for the last 30-some years of compromising with creating federal agencies and big government, and it hasn't worked. All it's done is pushed us closer and closer to the left and the Marxist bend. So we have on our side now a history of what works. We have the secret sauce. So we just have to communicate with our Republican friends that it's okay that you've been wrong. It's time now to come on board. And I think, like I said, I think Trump, what we did, listen, what Trump did is he exposed that vein, that undertow that's been there for a long time. And I just have a strong belief that we can build on that momentum. You have to take a step back sometimes. That's what we saw in the last election cycle. That's very normal as the pendulum is swinging. But right now, this is why I think we have a really crucial time with this particular Senate race, because we cannot lose this seat to either one of the bureaucrats that I'm running against. Because frankly, Washington, D.C. would be satisfied with either one of them. I believe that my campaign is a line in the sand for the Republican Party in Arizona. I really do. Are we going to be the party of Goldwater, or are we going to be the party of McCain? That's what this election's going to sort out. And we're going to find out.
Okay, let's get Phyllis here. I won't forget you.
Okay, it's always follow the money. You've laid out what you intend to do, but how are you going to get the donations that you need to pull out a win for Arizona? Because it's always about the money. Any of those big donors that,
Yeah.
you know, the McCain donors.
Let me do a little poll. How many of you have heard of my candidacy before I came here this evening? Raise your hands, please. How many of you had not heard of my candidacy before? Okay. How many of you knew that Martha McSally was a fighter pilot. I'm just kidding, that's a joke. That's a joke, that's terrible, I didn't mean it like that. I didn't mean it like that. To your point, there comes a point in the campaign where I can be the best candidate there is, and I may have the best message there is, but if they can drown us out, then they can drown us out. I just have a sneaking suspicion that we're going to have the resources we need based on the conversations I've been having and based on what I'm seeing from individuals, the appetite that's out there, the anguish that's out there, the fact that so many people know that we just lost the Senate seat with this candidate. At some point, I had to have faith that it would just come together the way it was supposed to. Myself, I'm personally putting a little bit of money into the campaign to start the campaign. I have a little bit of a different situation than most candidates that have been in my position, and I'll share with you what that is. I have a group of people volunteering for my campaign to start that are high-level people. These are people that I've worked with for a long time. These people are doing this out of the kindness and out of the goodness because they want to see me win this race. Their time is very valuable time. So I kind of come out of the gate with a group of people that you really can't buy. On top of that, I have a sense that people at some point will put their treasure where they believe the candidate needs to be. They'll put their treasure behind somebody. I'd rather have their time and talent, though. I hope to get your treasure, too. But I'd rather have your time and talent. So my job is just to focus on the pureness of my message and the pureness of what I bring to the table. And I have to have faith in the fact that, who here believes God still controls our government and our world?
What's the motion takes them down?
So I just have to have faith that those pieces will come together. And I've ran startup organizations, so I have kind of a benefit of knowing that I can build a bridge as we walk on it very comfortably. I'm pretty comfortable being uncomfortable. So.
Okay. We have Jim over here again.
Yep.
Again, about 3 or 4 months ago, I take a mild high blood pressure medicine, and not that I'm a type A personality, but
Sure.
it's, I went looking to see where's the manufacturer from. I want to buy this in the U.S.
Okay.
And you can't find it in the U.S.
Sure.
And you know, a few months ago, I was getting a little concerned because I wasn't finding hardly any of the drugs manufactured in the U.S. And now the other night on, what's her name, on Fox News, they had a thing on it where China is trying to, it's either China or India where they're made now, but they want to be the drug manufacturer of the world.
China.
Yeah, and I'm telling you, we got to understand what their goal is, and we cannot let it happen, even though I don't like federal government getting involved in everything. But this here is a national security issue. How would you respond to that?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that this is the one thing that we've seen with our president that's been so wonderful is he's exposed that should we really be so close with communist countries? Anybody here read the Communist Manifesto? Has anybody here read that book? Yeah. You know, there's something that's always stuck with me from the Communist Manifesto. Communism doesn't work unless everybody's playing. And it scares me that for so long the United States policy has been to build these countries that do not have the same core beliefs and principles that we have. And now we're giving them control of manufacturing our medications. And yeah, I have a problem with that. And I do believe that also, like yourself, it's probably a national security problem.
Okay, someone over there?
Someone over here? Oh, boy, I get to ask questions. Okay. I started watching a video of you being interviewed by, and I don't know who, the other day, but I don't think it was the radio program that you were on that I got an email about that said you were making some very interesting ideas about the border, and I would like to have you share what your philosophy on making statements like that is.
Sure.
Adam? All right, so.
Yeah, I don't negotiate fair.
No.
So let me just, what I'm showcasing this campaign is this. What you have with me, you have a beautiful thing. I'll share with you what it is. I don't negotiate fair, and I want unrealistic terms from the people I represent. I'm used to negotiating high-stakes deals behind closed doors for my businesses. What's good for my company, right? So you have to understand my mentality when it comes to these things. I throw some stuff out there sometimes that you may look at the first crack and say, whoa, that's a little out there. But if you really think about the strategy, I assure you that it's a little bit more sophisticated than at first glance. So recently, there was an article written that said I said that I wanted to annex Mexico. That's not what I said. I did not say I wanted to annex Mexico. That's not what I said. What I said is this. In our Constitution, there is a provision for countries or territories to become states. And with 30 million illegal immigrants in our country, and with a good portion of their country wanting to be Americans, maybe they ought to petition to become states in the right manner. Now, why would I say that? Let's think about this just for a second. We've had, again, drugs pouring across our border continuously. We have kids now, they go to smoke a little bit of marijuana in high school now, and they can die from heroin or from fentanyl. It's not like it used to be. We now have our children that are being kidnapped in Phoenix and in Tucson in a way like you've never seen before. That's called civil unrest, folks. That's what that is. We have Mexican flags being flown around in our country. So let me ask you a question. If I'm negotiating on your behalf, do you think I want to play fair with that? There is a portion in our Constitution where you can petition inside of your country to become states for our country. Why don't you try that? So yeah, is that different language than what you've heard? We need different results than what we're having. And I'm all for this wall. I am a big proponent. Listen, I worked hard. I put money, I put 25 grand into the Trump campaign. I spent my time with that campaign. I tried to help every way I possibly could. And for 2 years, we took over the administration, we took over the House, we had it all, right? And now, 3 years later, we're going towards election season, and we have a wall that we are witnessing people climb over in 15 seconds. So listen, at some point in time, I'm going to start negotiating my way. And I get it. It's a little bit different, but I never said annexation. I never said we should take over Mexico. All I'm suggesting to the Mexican people is that, hey, if in your country, if you guys want to be citizens so bad, maybe you should petition for it the right way. Does that make sense? That's not so far off when you really think about it, is it?
Earlier, you also mentioned the number one item with me when you talked about the absolutely opposed to gun control. I'm very happy about that.
Yep.
I would like to know the depth of it. Are you in favor of background checks? Are you in favor of universal background checks? Are you in favor of the Brady Act, which has no constitutional authority whatsoever, etc.?
Not to be infringed.
That applies to the other rights as well, such as the right of Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, Ninth Amendment, and Tenth Amendment, and the fact that you're giving up the Second Amendment when you have to ask the government for permission to exercise a right. So I'm suggesting that all of those rights are superior to government's authority to control guns in any way, shape, or form.
You're not going to keep firearms out of the hands of criminals, folks.
That's all right.
I mean, the fact that we're passing laws to affect law-abiding citizens is the most asinine thing that I've ever heard.
Absolutely. And the background checks have never prevented a crime or criminal access to a firearm in the history of the Brady Act.
Other questions? Come on, guys, you usually have more questions than this.
That's how good I am. You see, I mean, come on, this is probably new for this club.
Well, not entirely, but mostly.
How do we help you?
The question is how can you help me? This is tough for me, and I'll tell you why. You've been asked by so many politicians For years, you've been asked, and I know because I've been there, and I've been in the crowd, and I've listened, and I get it. But yes, I need your help. I need your treasure. I need your capital. Any donations that you can provide to our campaign will be used like ammunition. The beautiful thing with me is that we run such a small, efficient, elite group of people that will be running this, is that when capital comes into our campaign, it can be used solely as the ammunition. Of course, I want your time and I want your talents as well. Those are frankly, like I said, more important. So have fun with it. You finally have a candidate that you can get behind and know that if I win, I will stand on the Senate floor until my legs drop, and then I'll wake up and I'll do it again, and then I'll do it again, until the national conversation changes the way it's supposed to. We don't have a choice.
Joe? I'm not sure if it's still,
I'm not sure if it's still this way or not, but there used to be a thing where you pay $5 and you're giving your authority for collecting money to somebody else. There's two ways of doing it, one way you can see, anyway, they still have the two ways, and if so, which are you? Thank you.
No, I would, no, I'm not a clean elections candidate.
Okay.
No. I don't want government money, and I don't want the pension that comes with this job, and I don't want the pay that comes with this job. I don't want the lobbyists that are going to be lined out outside the front door, and I don't want the insider trading tips.
you're Jim again. He's one of our town councilors, by the way.
Okay.
Yeah, regarding the Second Amendment, to me, it's just not about protecting myself against criminals. But if you're elected, it's protecting myself against you, against our government. If I'm going to a tyrannical state, and and we need every bit the amount of effective firepower as a police state.
As a police state would have. And it isn't just about that. We need a militia-type force that can prevent, hopefully it wouldn't be you, but the Nancy Pelosi's and them of the world.
No, I'll be right with
coming
you.
after.
No, I'll be right with you. You're not taking my AKs. No.
You're not giving them to Beto?
No, they're not going. My AKs are going to stay where they belong.
I have a question.
Phyllis has another question.
The astronaut, Mark Kelly, he's going to try to hide how he feels about the Second Amendment just as long as he can. He will put it off. Are you going to fight? We want somebody who's going to fight. Finally, Donald Trump showed that we do have somebody that will fight. Nobody from Arizona wants to fight.
I'm going to fight. I'm going to fight on fair. I'm from upstate New York. Let me tell you something. A lot of kids were taught not to punch first. I was taught not only to punch first, but as soon as they come close, you punch. I'm not that type of guy. I'm not fair. When our governor started advocating and popularizing red flag laws, that was kind of the straw for me. I realized it's a little bit further down the road than I thought it was. So to your point, the good news for what you just said is actually there's one thing I want to correct you on. Mark is now on record very clearly advocating for red flag laws and for those things. So the nice thing is he is now actually saying what he's going with that. So the nice thing is for me, this is going to be a Second Amendment race the entire time, and that's a race we will not lose in the state. I promise you that.
Are there going to be any debates between you and McSally?
Good luck. Good luck. Yeah.
Can't get her.
Yeah.
She won't come talk to us. She won't show up.
No?
She's been invited to talk here.
Shirley, is that true?
Huh?
Is that true?
She did send her envoy to our last Reagan Day dinner, which you attended.
That's right.
And she is supposed to come on March 21st, if you want to see the fireworks fly. March 21st is going to be Lincoln Day luncheon, and Martha McSally is committed to be there, along with Kimberly Yee, the state treasurer, and Paul Gosar, Congressman. And Daniel McCarthy will be there too. Hopefully we'll be able to announce him as the real candidate. So, anyhow.
I don't foresee her agreeing to debate, no. I've heard from many clubs and from many of the GOP chairs that they are going to be officially and formally, by certified mail, asking both of us for a Douglas Lincoln-style debate. We'll see what happens.
Okay, Joe has a question.
If a reporter were to ask you this question, would you support repealing the existing laws on background checks? How would you respond?
Let me think about it. Yes.
Man, a
I
few
think that would
words.
be very dangerous for you, because
Yeah, it
most
would.
people, I think most people support a reasonable check, where you go into a gun store and they do, you know, the quick check, and either you get it or you don't get it.
I think, to your point, I think this is where we have to strike a chord with common sense. All we have to do is just point to the facts. The facts are, is background checks do not prevent firearms from getting in the hands of criminals. Now, listen, what is the likelihood of all the fights that we have, that's going to be the fight for me? We have a Department of Education that's spending $60 billion a year indoctrinating our children unconstitutionally, right?
I agree with you 100%, but that's not the point. The point is that the reporter is going to try to trap you into a position that most people would think is unreasonable.
Criminals
I
don't
agree
buy
with your
gun
whole point,
stores.
but you know, right now it's against the law for a felon to own a firearm. So if you go into a gun shop and you're a felon, they won't sell you the gun. I know you could probably get it on the black market, but you can't get it there. Most people don't recognize the fine point of that.
I understand what you're saying. I can see the attack ads now. Crazy Daniel McCarthy.
Absolutely.
You know, I get it. And they can, that's the wheelhouse that I'm in. But I'm not going to change my message. I'm not going to bend to the world.
We have to educate them.
The world has to bend to the truth. I'm more optimistic than you are. By the way, you're not wrong. I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying.
All right, and this is Ann's husband.
Jim, that's what I'm saying.
It's on camera now, though.
It'll be on YouTube.
That's right.
I was concerned, we got a letter from Mark Kelly, and I was concerned with the letter because he was not specific on dealing with protecting our unborn children. And we responded in a way that said it was hard for us to understand how one of our former military men would take a position of not protecting our unborn children. And I guess I would ask you, how do you feel about that?
I feel like life begins at conception.
Amen.
And I feel like I want to do anything in my power to define legally when life begins so we can start protecting the most vulnerable human beings in our world.
Amen.
Scary times. 60 million abortions.
Yeah.
60 million abortions.
Over 60 million.
61.
Yeah.
Over 60.
Yeah.
Right.
60 million abortions, and how many people die in shootings?
Okay, before Jim has another turn, I would like to ask you, besides being for building the wall and all that, when people are here, what do you think about federal welfare and state welfare going to illegals? And what do you think about the DREAM Act, and
Yeah.
what about some of those immigration issues?
It's organized crime. It's organized crime. I mean, I hate to be the bearer of bad news. If you're not aware of this, let me just make sure you understand what's really going on. You have individuals that are not citizens of this country, they have multiple aliases, that are obtaining multiple sources of benefits. They are then taking those benefits, in a lot of cases, frankly, those benefits are no longer staying in our country. This is organized crime. How I feel about it is that anything the government touches, they seem to have a way of ruining and destroying and deteriorating our country. We have to get smart here, quick. We're going to lose our country.
Okay, now here's Jim again.
Can I say something else really quick?
It's a good reason why we elect.
I want to say something else about this really quick. And the Ukraine border right now, sir, on the Ukraine border with Russia, for years they had a situation with the Ukrainians where there was similar type of situations. Gun laws started to become a little bit more advanced, everything else. And then when Russia started to be postured and then start to go into Ukraine, do you know what the policy is right now in Ukraine? It doesn't matter who you are. If you have a heartbeat, you can go and get a gun. So this is primal what's going on here. I understand that this may be uncomfortable because we've been told by our Republicans that we have to compromise. We're done compromising. And I understand that some people may be turned off, but let me tell you, the ones that are turned off, the weak people that are turned off, they're not going to be the ones that are front line like I am and my boys if something hits the fan. So how do I say this in a way that my candidacy is an alarm bell. Guys don't do what I'm doing. Listen, I live a great life. Listen, for the last 5 years, I write where I go, I do what I want. I mean, it's the life, the American dream that everybody aspires to. I am not doing this. I didn't turn my life inside out because of any other reason, but because after a lot of due diligence, extensive due diligence, there's something going on. And that corruption's at a tipping point. I don't care what the source of the corruption is. I don't care who's organizing the crime. I don't care about any of that. That's why I'm having such a hard time with that one. You know what I mean?
Okay, Glenn? Here's a, Mr. Mike.
You hit the nail right on the head, and that's what's happening with a lot of these little counties and towns, just like Payson. We had these good old boys that got elected to see what they could get for themselves. And that's why they fight to try to have a $25,000 audit and wants to spend $50,000 trying to get a mayor unelected, because they're afraid of what they're going to find out.
That's why I have security everywhere I go now.
Okay, Jim?
Yeah, I agree with the Second Amendment. And when you look at the shootings per capita, the United States is way, way down there. And you take those left-wing cities out of the equation, and we are much further down there. So, I mean, we're not in a murderous culture society here.
No.
By any means. And I think there's just a lot of hysteria about that that's going nowhere. But I do want to ask how you feel about the tax structure and also the national debt.
Great. I love those questions. Those are my wheelhouse. I just want to make a quick comment again on the Second Amendment stuff, because this is a passion for me. But does anybody remember what the headlines were before the mass tragedies that took place in El Paso and Ohio? Raise your hand if you remember what the headlines were in the news.
Collusion, collusion, collusion?
Close. Jeffrey Epstein.
Oh, yeah.
So in our federal prisons under maximum security, someone that was on suicide watch, that person no longer is with us. And then and now it's amazing how now we're talking about gun regulations. No, thank you. The national debt is a security threat, a national security threat. It takes Americans, everyone in this room, businesses, collectively, it requires about estimates between $400 to $600 billion a year big, big number to comply with the IRS. That's just to comply. The IRS has now been used as a political tool. This is the most dangerous item. We now have a situation where that agency can no longer be trusted to administer its work, in my opinion. So we have to introduce some form of tax system that is going to relinquish the responsibility from that body. They are no longer qualified to administer, collecting taxes in this country, in my opinion. Our national debt, being $1 trillion a year now, is unacceptable to me, and it's something that needs to be corrected immediately. It is a national security threat. It is, the sovereignty of our country is going to be affected very soon, if it hasn't already, by our national debt. By the way, your Social Security, and for those of you that don't know this is your Social Security program, the one that you paid in for your entire lives, right? Your money, it kills. I'm going to finish my sentence, I promise, but this is a cliff note. It kills me when I hear the term Social Security and entitlement together. You know how sick that makes me? Yeah, so it's your money. But they've been borrowing against the Social Security fund to pay for this debt. Did you know this? Yeah. True story. That's a Ponzi scheme.
Wait a minute, your third, Wes. Okay, we have Johnny back here, then we have Ann, and then we have Wes.
I thought you guys said you were done with questions.
What do you think about the idea after the election, of course, of nationalizing the zombie banks and nationalizing the Federal Reserve?
Those are two areas, if you don't mind, I would like to spend more time looking into in terms of how the most effective way of handling that is before I could say I'd be comfortable introducing legislation towards that, because there's so many tentacles, you know what I mean? And the last thing you want to do, it's good to be a disruptor. We need a disruptor at this point. We need a change agent to go into Washington, D.C. with the mission to change things. We need a lot of us. But I'm afraid to I don't want to say things that I can't perform on. I know I can perform on certain things with the filibustering rule, and some things I don't think I can. And those are some of them. So let me spend some more time on that before I can come back to you with a collective answer on that.
Okay. We have Ann, and then we have Wes. Here's Ann.
I'll make it short and sweet.
Okay.
Big tech and their influence.
Do you see the bill that's going through right now that Mike Lee introduced from Utah? Is anybody familiar with this? There's a bill right now that's been introduced about, please take a look at this, where they want to allow the visa program. And that has a lot to do with the big tech companies. Those organizations need to be categorized as publishers. They are using information and then they are publishing that information. And these organizations are in a very, very peculiar position because obviously the world has changed so much. So it's important that we start figuring out ways to make sure that these organizations are held accountable for suppressing language and suppressing publication. I'm seeing it now. It's interesting. Before, as there's momentum growing in my campaign, we're starting to already see things happening in the algorithms of our online advertising.
Yeah.
It's quite interesting to watch how it works. Scary times. Scary times. I don't know how to legislate for that just yet. I really don't, because that puts me in a peculiar position whereas my natural conservative bend towards the government kicks in, where I don't want to necessarily create law that is, against our principles or advocate for laws that are against our principles, because those are organizations, those are enterprises. So these are going to be some interesting challenges. challenges that I want a seat at the table for. I'm excited to get in and start dissecting those challenges and working through the best way of handling them.
And Wes, did you get the mic yet?
No, I didn't.
All right, go ahead. Turn around.
I may
Did
not.
I answer your question?
I may not need it.
Did I answer your question?
Oh, Joe is right behind you,
Wes.
she's giving it to you.
There it is.
Okay. I'll keep it down a little bit. Okay, you said earlier that the federal government is borrowing from Social Security. When somebody takes money from somebody else without their consent, is that borrowing or is that theft?
That's a very good point. That's a very good point. That's a very good point. Do you want to run? Do you want to run for Senate by chance?
Do you need a partner? And if it is theft, are they ever going to consider to give it back?
Well, this is the interesting part about it, just from a financial perspective. So your money it has been stolen,
Right.
right? Extracted,
Stolen.
okay?
Oh, but they put IOUs in there,
Right,
Wes.
right. And your yield on that.
What yield?
So your money is being put into a extremely low interest bearing, yeah.
No.
Non-existent.
Correct. It's what I call a Ponzi scheme.
Okay. All right, Ann, and then Don, and then we'll wind it up.
I'm finished with my
Oh, you
question.
finished?
Thank you.
All right, Don.
I told you guys I can stand all night. I plan on going to Washington DC and stand on the Senate floor, so you can test it right now. We can just go.
Back to the issues of gun control. I wanted to point out one thing. Felons do not go to gun stores and pay $700 for a pistol so they can go rob the local stop and rob for $380 and a pistol in the store. So this is not a serious problem. And as I said before, no criminal has ever been prevented from buying a gun by a background check. No crime has ever been prevented by a background check.
Really what it boils down to is the rule of law that we have. Is it constitutional or is it not? And I think that's the problem, is we
It is
allow.
not.
If it's not constitutional, then what, we have to have a foundation that law is created from. So if we're neglecting that, then what do we really have?
Can I get the last word on education? Please.
No. Well, yeah, you can have the last
Go
one,
ahead.
but I just want to say,
Yep.
and back to the foundation, you were saying the foundation is, our God-given rights. And we've taken God out of everything.
Yep.
And these people here, almost every time it comes up, I'm going, and if we don't have God, if we don't have Jesus in front, we're, as a culture, our founding fathers said the same thing, most all of them, over and over, even Ben Franklin. If we don't have God as our head, as a culture and as a government, republic, we're not going to allow it.
We have forgotten where we came from.
Okay, do you want to just tell us what you're planning to do for education?
Who here thinks that we should have a federal Department of Education?
No.
Okay.
Count the hands, we count that. Put a no figure.
I would love nothing more than to see a for rent sign on that big building in Washington, D.C. There is no jurisdiction. We need our 10th Amendment respected. The federal Department of Education needs to go away. It needs to go away. It needs to be defunded. It needs to go away, period. So, yeah, please, if you can, my website, demanddaniel.com. If you can donate to the website, it's great. I know some of you are a little concerned about that. It is a secure website. Don't worry. Your information is secure on the website. But if you could donate, I would greatly appreciate it. And of course, just remember that those dollars, I understand how hard-earned those dollars were. I know how hard they are to come by. I'm with you there. And I assure you that you are buying ammunition. You are not building a gun. Okay? So thank you very much. It's demanddaniel.com, 2 Ds, demanddaniel.com.
Shirley, can I say something really quick?
Yes, please.